For all the black people who want to tell me that Asians are not at war with us, what do you think now? Akai Gurley's family is outraged, naturally. So where are the Asians who were protesting in the tens of thousands, claiming that they stood in support of the Gurley family at? They're nowhere to be found. So much for Asians supporting the Gurley family. Is it possible, just possible, that your good Asian friends lied to you? The DA's office that put so much effort into convicting Peter Liang, who ridiculed his blatantly fraudulent defense just a few weeks ago, has now incredibly done a 180-degree turn and just asked the judge in the case to put aside the verdict, and they are even demanding, that's right, demanding, that Liang get no jail time. There's only one term for this: prosecutorial misconduct. Ken Thompson is a corrupt criminal in violation of the law. This scumbag held private, closed-door meetings with Liang's lawyers and his racist Asian supporters, meetings that Akai Gurley's family was not invited to nor allowed to attend. In fact, Ken Thompson hasn't held any meetings of note with the Gurley family. That's how you know the fix was in. Brooklyn is not even an Asian enclave. It's largely black. There was no threat of political reprisal here. The Asians had no political leverage at all. So, why did this happen? The Asians resorted to Plan B: bribery. That's something you can only do, though, when you've got power, wealth, and influence. Obviously, somebody put a bug in Ken Thompson's ear. The way bribery is done in the U.S. is that you don't give the bribe directly to the politician. Instead, you give the money or the lucrative corporate job to the politician's wife, his sibling, child, his in-law, whomever, or you promise the politician that he'll get a cushy corporate job when he leaves office. All he has to do is subvert the law today. This has been the case with the black judge presiding over the Michael Slager trial, and the same has certainly happened here. There were Asians in the U.S. and in China working behind the scenes for this outcome. They coordinated and worked hand in hand with the white supremacists and city government in New York to violate the law and to illegally override a just verdict. Pressure was surely being applied by the Chinese government, who themselves are now making it indisputably clear what their intentions in Africa are. Dr. John Henrik Clarke warned us, Africa's enemies came from Asia long before they started coming from Europe. Do you believe it now? A decade ago, when a white supremacist murdered Oscar Grant and claimed it was an accident, he actually went to prison. This time, the murderer didn't. So we are clearly losing ground by any metrics you want to use. Black men are going to have to tool up now and be ready now to protect your own life and the ones of those you care about. Black men must accept that these are not accidents and that the government is attempting to normalize the murdering of black men. That's what this is all about. The Asians are making their offensive against us. Only a fool would continue to question that a war is being fought against us. At some point, we will have to push back. Black men need to be ready now. We have told you the government is carrying out a soft genocide. Now it's becoming a medium genocide. Stop continuing the delusion that you're going to get justice in the courts. You won't. They've gone from giving the murderers of black people a slap on the wrist to just letting them go altogether. Even now, at this late date, there are still black people desperately clinging to their pathetic meme that everybody's just people, you know. We're all the same under the skin. Now, before we have any Asian bigots drag out their talking points on this video, I would remind you that you Asians didn't say a word when white cops killed Michael Cho in California. There was no nationwide protest over that. No Asian politicians demanding that Asians concentrate their vote. No behind-the-scenes maneuvering in order to get a conviction. No pressure by the Asian governments or Asian so-called activists at home. And before any Asians start with any lies about scapegoating, where were the Asians at when those two black cops in Louisiana were charged with murder after a white thug tried to run them over with his truck? Asians have never been this exercised over a dead Asian person, yet they took to the streets by the tens of thousands to defend their right to murder a black man. There will never be any sort of modus vivendi between blacks and Asians until Asians learn to love life more than they hate black people. The problem here is that there is no penalty for killing a black man, and so as long as shedding black blood carries no price, this will continue. Black men must tool up in order to ensure we can defend ourselves, but moreover, we must coordinate with one another to make sure that when some anti-black race soldier calls himself coming into our neighborhoods, that we are watching and ready, so that if he decides to practice race war, he is made to pay the price for it. Black men, the debate is over, has been for a damned long time. It is now time to declare some new rules. Black men, you must stop wasting time going through the motions of appealing to a criminal justice system whose only purpose is to put on a quasi-legal show for the public. We all know the real system is what happens behind the scenes and has absolutely nothing to do with the law. When you sit on your hands and do nothing, waiting for your day in court, you send the clear signal to everyone that you're still playing along with their mockery of justice. You must make it clear that we do not recognize nor will we be bound by what we all know to be jurisprudential fraud. You must make it clear that you recognize that we are at war, and in war there are no rules. We will no longer make any pretense that the police are not anti-black thugs, a government-sanctioned death squad whose only purpose is to oppress black men through violent killings. We are at war. We will no longer tolerate anyone in our midst who claims that we are not being targeted for genocide by the whites, Asians, and Hispanics. To protect ourselves, black men must draw the line of truth clearly, and that line must be bold and black. Any black man who at this point tries to resurrect the old rhetoric about how they're not all like that is a turncoat and must be driven from among us. They will not be allowed to remain among us. They will not be allowed to be seen among us. They won't even be allowed to communicate with us. We are at war. We will no longer allow the media to tell us what to think on any subject. The media takes any killing of a black person and immediately acts as a PR team for the killer. Meanwhile, there's not one case where a black man has acted in self-defense that the media has taken his side. Unless a black man has acted against another black man, we must not and will not allow him to be tried in the media. We must not and will not allow our enemies to dictate the terms of any debate. We must institute a clear and hyper-aggressive system of jury nullification. The first part is that we must make sure that no black man accused by the state of harming someone outside our community can be touched by this racist judicial fraud calling itself a justice system. We know the laws are written to target black men. We know the DAs are there only for the purpose of incarcerating black men. The law is not there as a rule book. It is there as a list of rhetorical rationales, meant to give the flimsy veneer of justification for locking black men up wholesale and allowing the murderers of black men to walk. After all, Ken Thompson didn't cite even one legal justification for letting Liang go. He simply said it ought to happen. So much for the rule of law. Black men on juries must take control of the jury room. As the old saying goes, every jury has a leader and the verdict is his. Seems the only times black men are capable of speaking up is when it concerns sex or sports. That day is over. If you're a black man, you're supposed to be ensuring that the legal system cannot touch a black man unless we have decided it should. This is the crucial element of our self-defense. The Asians are showing you that they've worked out their own jury nullification apparatus. It's time we perfected our own. It is the duty of every black man to hijack every jury he is a part of, to put its members on notice that nothing said or done in the jury room will remain confidential. The public will know when a white supremacist on a jury has attempted to help a race soldier get away with murder or to prevent a black man from being able to freely defend himself. Black men must enforce this and reinforce this. Whenever the subject of the jury process is raised by black men, the first thing that must be said by us is jury nullification. Our job is not to be part of the jury, it is to lead them. If 3 black women could make sure O.J. Simpson got justice, then surely black men can do it. But that brings us to the next point. You can't control a jury if you're not on it. We must ensure that black men are on the juries whenever a black man is on trial, or whenever a black person has been killed by a race soldier. This means black men have to organize ourselves and target the DA's offices. These are the frontline soldiers in the legal portion of the race war. They are the ones most responsible for purging black men from the jury pool during the jury selection process. Black men can get results, but only when we get in the bad guys' faces. After the Gurley verdict, black men packed up their signs and went home. We figured to leave Ken Thompson to his own devices, and by doing so we created an opening that the Asians were able to exploit. They were in front of him. We were not. Confront these bastards en masse. Subject them to lawsuits. Recall elections. Do not allow them to be able to operate. Harassing the enemy is a crucial element of war, and all too often we allow our enemies to go about their racist business with barely a word of protest. Dr. John Henrik Clarke once said that you had better take the fight to them before they decide to bring the fight to you. Black men had better rediscover what this means if we hope to survive this fight. When a black man stands in his own defense, or that of his people, our first reaction must be to protect him. We do not care what the media or those outside our community say. We recognize the so-called law for the fraud that it is. We are unapologetically black first, and the only justice that a black man gets is the kind that he makes.